And we're here at the MedtechVISION conference, and I'm thrilled to introduce Kate Garrett and Lisa Earnhardt, who have been kind enough to give a few minutes after Lisa's interview to sit down and give a bit of an insight on how this day has gone. Thanks so much for sitting down, guys. I know it's been a long day.
Energizing day.
Yeah, I would say that's true. So what I wanted to do is get a bit of understanding of how this all feels. And I know that's a bit qualitative in nature, so let's try to put our words around it, because I've been to a lot of conferences and I've seen you at a bunch, and they're more work. This doesn't feel like work to me. And I'm curious if that's the same for everybody. So if you each could take a minute and just explain like the vibe here and how it feels about this certain level of camaraderie that's here.
Well, I always say this is my favorite conference of the year by far. And I think one of the real reasons is it does feel like a community as opposed to work. There's, people who come every year that you start to build relationships with. It's just an amazing breadth of people across the country, not just the Silicon Valley crew, but across the whole country. And also we spread across, the early stage entrepreneurs all the way to people who have spent their careers in the large corporations. And I just feel like it's a real kind of snapshot of our ecosystem.
Do you think it's organic? Like, how does it happen?
I think it's organic. I got to go to the first MedtechVISION. I don't know if I think you were
I think I was there.
Executive panels, Lisa. And yeah, it's been totally organic. From that very first conference, Amy and Deb kind of set the stage for the tone and the vibe of the culture, and it's just organically grown and sort of maintained that very community feel.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that it doesn't feel like work. Despite the fact that there's actually some really serious discussions ongoing, and that's what I really love about it. It's sort of focused on topics that are incredibly relevant today and in the future. But it's with people who really care, who are incredibly passionate and just incredibly talented. It's so fun I don't get a chance to see everyone here all that frequently, but when I do, boy, it's electrifying. It's just the energy, the passion, the capability, the potential. It's really fun, and to see folks that have been involved at the very beginning. I met some people here today. This is their first conference, and they're like, "How have I never been?" And I'm like, "It'll be it's a go-to."
Well, so that's interesting. So how would you describe this to someone that's been thinking about joining or thinking about being on a panel or speaking here or just coming to the event? How would you describe it to them? And look, this is kind of what you missed, and here's how I would lay it out to you.
I would just say this is the go-to event of the year. If you're going to go to one conference, you've got to go to this one. And as Lisa said, the content is amazing, but the people really, for me, are the highlight that you're going to meet. The networking is, again, the best of all the conferences I go to all year.
What do you think of the patient keynote? All I keep hearing is how wonderful she was. Unfortunately, I was out here. I didn't hear it. I have to see the recorded version. How did that? Oh, were you here for that?
I was not here for it, but I
only caught the tail end of the encore, so
I heard
don't ask
that
us
this
that question.
individual
and
was
honestly,
fantastic.
I've continued to hear just the energy around it and the stories she told about getting access for treatment and just the challenges between being a woman, being of color, and just that we need to change these things. And it's so great, and I think just so important for us to really listen to our
everyone
patients
came out inspired.
Look
on their faces was like they were just moved, and so I'm like the newest Marvel movie. Like I'm waiting to see this video so I can watch this individual. One of the things that seems to be pervasive in the group is this concept of reaching back, of you achieving, and someone likely helped you get where you are. But instead of being comfortable with that, it's turning around and saying, okay, how can I bring anyone else with me? And I think Amy and Deb personify that. So I'm curious for you guys, has it been similar in that someone helped you get where you are and you're turning around and saying, okay, how do I bring people across for me?
Yeah, it is interesting because I think, some of the founders, including Amy and Deb, were from Guidant, as I was as well, right? And we had some tremendous female leaders who have served as mentors for me, and I think, so do unto others as they do unto you. And so I feel like I've been trying to give back as well. But I learn as much from those that I mentor as I think they probably do as well. I mean, it's just a sort of a period of lifelong learning, but I do think this organization sort of personifies that.
Is it similar for you? I know you work more on the investment side. You're not one of the corporations. Does it feel the same way?
Yeah, well, I would also say Lisa is absolutely an embodiment herself of that ethos. I have personally benefited from her mentorship, and as a faculty member in the Stanford Biodesign program, years and years of our fellows have benefited from Lisa, reaching to people earlier in their career and providing her guidance. So I have seen it firsthand through Lisa. I have benefited from it, and certainly agree, today, knowing that I have benefited so much from leaders that have come before, I certainly try to give back, whether it be through teaching and biodesign or just other mentorship programs like the Fairland.
What's funny is I don't know the answer to this. Does the biodesign program have a mentoring concept to it where someone kind of shepherds you through?
Yeah, I would say Stanford Biodesign is an experiential learning program, and so there are faculty, but it's very much more of a mentorship faculty,
Okay.
like learn by doing and kind of shepherding people through the process. And then there are more mentor roles. So Lisa, for I don't know, a decade maybe, was an executive mentor.
Really?
To one of the
I
teams.
think you know a person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really?
And it's such a fun way because you just think it's like the best and the brightest in the future of healthcare, and people like Kate who've gone on to found companies and do exceptionally well. And it's fun to be able to, at least provide a little bit of input and guidance and insight and years of experience for them. So it's a virtuous cycle, my friend.
I was going to say, it's what you're going to remember when it's all said and done. You're not going to remember your titles. You're going to remember everyone else that you brought up because you're going to see them on LinkedIn, or they're going to call you or let you know, hey, look what just happened to me. And it's incredibly gratifying. I see it a bit in my town where we do a lot of this kind of stuff, and it's just amazing to see the kids just transform. And so that's one of the things I wanted to ask you both about is how far down can we go with this, meaning grad school, undergrad, and high school, where I guess you can call them girls at that point, where they should be exposed to this early to I guess, normalize it. And I don't know if any of your companies do those kinds of programs, or Stanford does that kind of program, but I would love to hear about some of it because I think that's where it starts.
Yeah. I would even say it goes earlier. I think the data shows that girls sort of bifurcate out of STEM tracks even in elementary school because you start to have these preconceived biases of what certain genders are good at. So I am a big fan of starting even earlier, encouraging young women to pursue math and science. Stanford Biodesign has sort of less informal programs where they do support, I think high school is probably the youngest age that they've done things, but there are some programs where they support, innovation days for students to come in.
Yeah, and what's interesting, so at Abbott, we do have actually a very active high school internship program,
Really?
specifically focused on underrepresented people in STEM, students in STEM. So whether that be female or Black, et cetera, it's tremendous to see how you can influence and engage them early. And we've had students who've gone from being, high school sophomores, juniors, and seniors and then they become college interns, and then they become full-time employees. And the thing is, they would never have chosen, or they may or may not have ever chosen that path, but the fact that we were able to show them the possibilities, expose them early and often, and get them interested and be able to, ultimately recruit them. And I think we have to do that. We need to start earlier and earlier, and because otherwise people offboard way too early. And in an industry like this where STEM is core to our industry and those backgrounds. I mean, you're an engineer, I'm an engineer. Mm-hmm. Chances are half that room was full of engineers, at least people who studied engineering back in the day or some form of science. So we need to be doing it as early as we can.
It's funny, I noticed something about you that we have in common. My daughter did the STEM program at Olin when she was in middle school.
Oh, wow.
And so I noticed that you went to school there, and she came home from that just totally energized about it, that it's what's the right word I would look for? Not legitimate, but she just seemed to believe that it's possible and that it's okay to be a really good student, and there's nothing to shy away from with that. And now it's almost the other way where I have to rein her in a bit, but it's amazing how those programs matter to kids at every age.
Yeah, I mean, especially I think about being in healthcare.
Yeah.
Right? Like we need the representation not only because it leads to better outcomes, but because at the end of the day, half this world's population is female, right? And so we need both genders to be able to solve today's healthcare challenges. So if you only have half of the world represented, you're not going to be meeting the needs.
Yeah, we had another individual was here before you guys, and she's heavily involved in the Northwestern Kellogg MBA program, and this is the first time that they've had half of the program is female, and she said it's just so incredibly validating, to see that when she first started it was completely unbalanced, and now it's equivalent, which is just mind blowing. So with all this great feeling that's coming from this, and you guys I'm sure enjoyed your talk there, so it has this momentum right now. But what happens tomorrow? What do we do next week? And so I'm curious from both of you what you think about whatever type of, even if it seems minuscule, like what can be done to keep this going so this is not just a once a year thing, this is an everyday thing.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's continuing to build on the networks that people develop here more formally. I know there's the MedTech conference that AvaMed puts on in October, and we also have programming, specifically geared around unrun women as well as people of color with MedTech Color. And so I think there are a number of different ways to do it both formally and informally, continue to sort of, create this sense of community and show people that it's possible.
Yeah, I agree. I think the way to keep it going is by participating. We can't rely on Amy and Deb to carry the torch for all of us forever, and we can all get involved in some way, whether it's as a member of the organization, going to an event, or offering to help with various events, or offering our expertise on panels. So I would just encourage people to get involved and participate.
I've always thought of it as kind of what you learn in finance when you're first in school, that compounding concept of if you start doing it, and then not only
so
your
on,
work,
and you tell two friends,
right.
and so on.
I swear,
you may know
what...
Prel, but poor Kate probably doesn't. Wasn't it the Prel
we'll
commercial?
show it to you on YouTube. But I really think that there's something to that not only is it the work that I'm doing, but it's also the benefit of someone else seeing you do it, and then they start doing it, and then another group is formed. Before you know it, it's all around you, as opposed to just in one specialized spot. Because I think this organization is great, but what about if it was in Minnesota and Boston and LA and in all other parts of the US, and then certainly international? Now all of a sudden you're talking about something that's game changing, not just local. And so you guys, I don't know how much international work you do, but is that something that's worked on as well overseas? I've never really thought about it that way because I live here, of course. Are you aware of your employees that are overseas, if they're experiencing the same kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, we do within Abbott most certainly. Yeah. Whether it be women in STEM, we do women leaders of Abbott, those types of things. And I think there are some parallel organizations. I mean, I think MedtechWOMEN is special.
Yeah,
it really is.
Yeah, I don't know how to replicate it, but I don't know if you can, because it's so personal, and just the individuals involved they're extraordinary. So the other part of this is the relationships, the networks that you're forming here, and hopefully the ability to expand those. And so I don't know if your organization does things like that, which are less work related but more people related, where you just network. Does Abbott provide that kind of situation, like for people to meet other people within the company? Like, how's that set up?
Yeah, so we have, as I said, we have employee interest groups sort of across the board, spectrums from, all whether it be females, or I mean you can go down the list of Black executives and whatnot. And I think that's so important to have those affinity groups, I think is what we call them. But I think that's really important. I mean, I would say during the pandemic, it's been more challenging because we weren't able to get people together in person. And I think an event like today, part of the energy level is just seeing people in person. I mean, you can certainly virtually engage and you can provide content that way, but it just doesn't beat seeing people and giving them a hug and kind of getting being in the room and literally feeling the energy. You just can't get the same thing.
Well, you kind of grew up with some of these people. I mean, you've been together for so long.
Yes.
And then, in situations like you're saying with Kate, where you met her later and now you're watching her, quote unquote, grow up.
Yeah.
It's astounding.
Yeah, it's funny. I was telling a story on stage how I had been giving a talk at our national sales meeting, and I was literally about to deliver a baby. And Kate, I don't know if you can see, but she is expecting. And it's funny because there were half a dozen people in the room who were in that room with me, who used to work with me, who came up and like, I remember that, and thought you were crazy. And I was like, years ago. It was just so important. You don't get like, when you run a sales organization, I can't remember if I was running it or if I think I was the president of the business at the time, but you don't get too many chances that you get the whole sales organization together, like usually once a year, right? And that was our one time. And so they're so important because they are your conduit to your customers. And so I'm like, I'm not going to miss out. So.
Well, it obviously was memorable because you have people still talking about it.
So we were happy that Kate didn't replicate that.
My water didn't break on stage.
So that was a good thing, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we won't keep this going much longer because I wanted that to happen here.
We don't want it to happen.
I'm not trained for that. Awesome. Well, look, I had a feeling that you guys were going to be a great way to end this, and I'm so glad it worked out. I know you're swamped, and I appreciate you making a few minutes to sit down. It encapsulates what we're trying to accomplish here, which is to make this as amplified as possible. And that's what we're going to do, and it's amazing how getting everyone together is going to be the impetus for changing the way that it's done all around the world just by getting in the same room. Yeah, so thanks so much for being here. It really worked out well.
Thank you for covering it.
Oh, please.
Yeah, thank you.
My pleasure.